Hi, this is Steve with Doublereno Woodworking. So I have not decided for sure which CNC machine I'm going to buy yet, but I am going to make a decision by the first of next week and get it ordered. I have decided that I'm going to go with a VCarve Pro for my design software. It's very easy to use. It has a lot of advanced functions to it. You can do create, and you can also run get your G code out of it. So it does everything you need to send it right to whatever machine you're going to use. So what we're going to do today is we're going to do a text on text, and that's where you have your text on one layer, and then you have another layer of text that's raised sitting on top of the first layer of text. It's a really cool effect. I'll probably use it a lot in a lot of my signs and stuff. So I'm going to go through my process of how to do that. It's really pretty simple to do. There's a couple different methods. One is a pocket where your edges of your letters are straight. And then there's also VCarve. VCarve gets a little more difficult. This one we're just going to do with a straight pocket. It's really simple and quick. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to set up a board. And we're going to do a 10. I've already kind of run through this once. We're going to do a 10 by 6 board. We're going to go 3/4 of an inch thick. We're going to work off the top of the surface, material surface. That means we're working off the top, not the machine bed. And then we're going to center everything off the center of the drawing board. And we're going to hit OK. So now we've got our 10 by 6 board. So the first thing we need to do, obviously we need to get 2 layers of text on here. So that what I like doing is I come in here and I know I'm going to have 2 layers of text. So I'm going to rename this. Sorry. Rename that, just to right click is what gets to that. So I'm going to do a layer called bottom text. And then I'm going to add another layer, and I'm going to call it top text. The layers, you can get away without doing the layers sometimes, but it sure helps you keep organized. And then I'm going to have a border, because you have to have a border to get this effect. And then the last thing we're going to put on here is a merged text layer. Okay. So now we've got our bottom text, top text, a border layer, and that one didn't rename, so I'll rename that one. And hit enter. Okay, so now we got a merge layer. So what we're going to start out with is we're going to go with our bottom text. So there's 2 ways. You can activate this thing, clicking it right there. Sorry, it's over here. You can activate it over here, or if you want to activate another one, you can just click it. I like just clicking it. It's easier than hitting that little button. So we're going to start out with our bottom text layer. So we're going to come over here to our text tool right here under Create Vectors. And I'm going to start out with this American Captain's a text I really like. So we're just going to make the word text for our bottom layer. And I want to make it, my whole board is 6 inches, so I want an inch from the top and bottom. So we're going to go 4 inches, and that will leave us an inch on the top, an inch on the bottom. So once you create the text, it's still highlighted because it's pink. If it's not, you can just click it again when it turns pink. Then you just come up here and align material, and that aligns it right to left and top to bottom, puts it in the center of your drawing board. Okay, so there's our bottom text. So now we're going to come back up, and we're going to turn off the bottom text and select our top text. Whatever's selected is what's up here. So now we know we're working on that. So now we come back to our text tool, and on that one we're going to write the words on text. And then we're going to go with probably an Arial here. And I'm going to start out with probably 2 inches. I want that to be smaller. And we're going to hit OK. Now I'm going to show you a little function here. I'm going to show you a few functions as I go along here. So this thing's, it's highlighted, not highlighted. If you select this third over, the little arrow is when you highlight it, it says transform mode, move, scale, and rotate selection. So that we're going to do basically all of those here. So we're going to use that button. We're going to highlight our text, and it brings up all these dots around here. So this one right here, I want to make this a little shorter. I want to keep my height, but I want to move the letters closer together. So I'm going to do that. Excuse me. And that probably gets us pretty close. So I'm going to go ahead and turn my bottom text back on just so I can kind of see. Now when I move this, I just click it here in the middle, and I can bring it up here, and that's probably pretty good. I want it to be a little bit longer but not as tall. So that's pretty good right there. So we're going to come in here and we'll go ahead and just center our text in the middle of our board again. Now the one thing that I've done, I ran this through one time before, and you got to remember when you're routing these things out, if you don't want to have to get, like, there's plenty of space right here for an end mill to get around and make all of our turns. All this looks good, all this looks good. Let me turn that bottom layer back off again. Back on our top text, bottom layer turned off. So all this is pretty good, but right here it gets really close. So if you don't want to have to switch to an additional toolpath, right here you're going to have to move that letter over, or you're going to have to put in probably a, depending on how big your board is, but you're going to have to go to a smaller end mill, run just an extra toolpath just to get that little gap. So what I did here, and I'm going to rotate this text, but I don't want to do that yet. So what I want to do, I want to highlight all these, and then I'm going to convert them to curves. And you're going to have to do this anyway, because before, let me undo that. Let me show you why. What I need to do is I need to move this letter T over. But this text is all put together, so I can't just highlight this letter. So I need to separate this letter out and move it over. So what I need to do is I want to, with it highlighted, I'm going to right click, and then I'm going to convert it to curves, unhighlight everything, and now I can highlight just this letter. And just so I keep it straight and in line, I'm just using my arrow tabs, and I'm going to arrow over about 3 or 4 clicks. And that gives me a pretty decent little gap right there now. So now I'm going to go back, and then I'm going to go ahead and just group these together. Because now it's not text anymore, because I converted it to curves, so now it's not text. So I'm just going to highlight all of them, and I'm going to come back over here and I'm going to group them back together, because I still have some manipulation that I want to do. So I'm going to use this selection mode where I can rotate and resize it. So what I'm going to do, let's go ahead and turn our bottom layer back on again. We want to be on our top text, but bottom layer on. So I got this thing highlighted, and if you grab any of these little corners right here, the little round circle comes up, that means you can rotate. So what I do, I just want to put, just for an effect, I just want to put a little bit of a rotation on that. And that looks pretty good right there. So while I still got it highlighted, I'm going to go ahead and just make sure, see, it was off center a little bit. So now I got both of these texts centered, and I got my rotation on that text right there. Okay, so that looks pretty good. So now we want to come down, we want to get on our border layer, and then I need to close that out. So I'm going to come in on a rectangle, and I like using the rounded rectangle, so I'm going to put a extended radius external, so it's going to round my corner a little bit. I think a 1/4 inch will probably work. We'll look and see what it looks like. So my overall board is 10 by 6. So if I'm going to make my border 1/2 inch in, so I want to take 1 inch total off both, so 9 by 5. So I'm going to hit create on that. And it didn't put it in the center, but we just close it. Well, I made 2 circles, so I'm going to edit undo on that second one. It's because I wasn't closed. I hadn't hit create yet. So go back up there and then center my rounded rectangle on there. So now I've got my bottom text here, I've got my top text here, and I've got my border. And if we turn off the border should go off. We turn off the top text, that goes off. Bottom text, that goes off. So we've got them all on here. Okay, now for this effect to work, everything has to be in curves. It can't be text anymore. We took the top text. Let's turn everything but the top text off. So the top text is now not text anymore. And one way you can tell if it's text or not, highlight it, click on the text button, nothing shows up. If we go do that with our bottom text, turn that one back on, highlight our text, the word that you have is right there. So that's still text. Okay, so we've already converted the top text into a group, or into curves, and then grouped it. So we need to do the same thing with this one. So now with this thing highlighted, you want to go in there and right click, convert it to curves, and then you can either come over here and hit the group button, or you can right click it again and group objects. So now our top and bottom text are both groups. So we're good to go on that. Okay. So now we're going to have to do some other things, but we need to get all of these things on this merge layer. So I'm going to turn the merge layer off, and it doesn't really at this point, as long as you got them all turned on, it really doesn't matter where you put this. I'll tell you what we're going to do. This makes it a little bit easier because you got two steps. You work with the top text and you work with the bottom text. So we're going to take the border with our top text highlighted. We're going to click on the border, and then we're going to right click that, and we're going to copy that onto our top text. We don't want to move it, we just want to copy it. So now when we have our border turned off, the border still shows up on our top text, and then we turn that off, the border's still there by itself too. So that's what you want. You want your border on your top text, and then the next step, your border is going to be with all your merge text together. So what you do is go ahead and turn everything but the border back on, because if not, you'll end up with two borders on there on your merge text. So you got everything there with just one layer of text, no duplicates. Highlight all of it, and then right click, and now you want to copy it to this merge layer. So now we come in here, turn everything off except for the merge layer, and highlight the merge layer up here. We've got all of our stuff onto the merge layer. Okay, so we got one more thing to do on the merge layer. Everything else is pretty much ready to go to start setting toolpaths. This top text, that's going to be our first toolpath because it's on a different level than what the other text is. But for our merge layer, what we have to do is we have to get rid of all these lines and stuff between where these two texts overlap each other. If not, the machine will cut those lines for us. And the easy way to do that is you come in here and you highlight all of your text, and you have this button right here, and it's called Weld Selected Vectors. So we've got both of our layers of text selected. Remember, we're in our merge layer up here where we're doing this. And then you just hit that Weld Selected, and it takes all the lines everywhere that they cross. It takes them out. It looks like a mess, but I promise you at the end it'll all come out and it'll look really good. So now that's done. So now we can turn everything off and then turn our top text back on, and we're ready to start making toolpaths. So select your top text and turn it on. Go ahead and just select everything. Go ahead and select the border and the text itself, and then we go over here to our toolpaths. So we're going to start out with the pocket toolpath. And a lot of my numbers are already saved in here because I've already made this once. So our start depth, but this is the top text, so we're starting from the top of the board. So start depth is going to be 0. We're going to go 1/8 of an inch down for this first layer of text. And I put in a 1/4 inch end mill, so it's going to pocket. This is going to be a pocket, so it's going to pocket around these and inside this border, and it's going to pocket all of this out. So I put in a 1/4 inch end mill, and then I put in a 1/16 inch end mill. So the 1/4 inch is going to come take out the majority of this. Then a 1/16 will come in and get some of these tight corners and stuff right here. So it should get everything out. Offset raster. The offset This is going to be another video in itself, but when I'm taking out massive amounts right here, I like the raster better. I'll do another video going over between offset and raster, but I prefer the raster on that. If you can't change it, if it's one of these are not highlighted, I don't know how to unhighlight them now. But anyway, one of these mills has to be highlighted to allow you to change this. But so we're going to go with raster. So we're going to go with a 1/4 inch end mill, a 1/16 inch end mill, and then we're going to use the raster. None of this other stuff down here really matters. So we're going to go ahead and calculate our toolpath, and then we're going to get a preview all toolpaths. And that looks like that got everything pretty clean around all of our tight spots and all that. So that part of it is done. So now we can go ahead and we can close this, and let's go back over to our drawing mode. Get back on 2D. So we want to turn that one off, turn merge layers back on, and then work off our merge layers. And we want to do the same thing. We're going to highlight all this, and then we're going to go back over to toolpaths. And we're going to go back with another pocket toolpath. And we're basically going to leave everything the same, except now this one we took out 1/8 of an inch on the first one, so we want our start depth now to be 1/8 of an inch. So we go 1.25. I'm sorry, 0.1. That would be bad. 0.125. So we're starting out at a 1/4 inch, and we're still going to go 1/4 inch deep. So what it cuts out here is going to end up being 1/4 inch twice. I'm sorry, 1/8 of an inch. It's going to be 1/4 inch total for the bottom layer here. We're going to leave our end mills the same. We're going to stay on raster. There's what I was talking about, where neither one of these is highlighted, so I can't make any changes here. But if you click on one of those, now that lets you make changes to that. So if those aren't highlighted, you just got to click one of your tools, and then it'll allow you to change that. So the only thing we really changed here is our start depth. Everything else stayed the same for the second toolpath. So we're going to hit calculate, and then hit preview all toolpaths. And there it is. Pretty cool. Now one thing, you know, when I showed you earlier how I moved the T over so I wouldn't get that space in there. This right here, all this is here, see where that you got that opening there where the X is, and it couldn't get in there close enough. And so the reason for that is because it left such a small hole that it couldn't get fully in there to do that even with a 1/8 inch end mill or 1/16 inch end mill. So the way you can fix something like that, if that happens, is you can come back over here. We're going to go ahead and delete. We'll just delete all of our toolpaths. I'm sorry. Delete all of our toolpaths. We'll go back in here and reset our preview. Go back over to our drawing. We're going to delete all of this. We'll come back over, turn on our bottom text and top text. So right here is where, right here and here is where our problem was. So let's take our top text and highlight it. And all we have to do is just bump it a little bit. So that should fix that problem right there. And that made that hole bigger, so it should be able to get in there and do that. Right here might end up being a little bit of a problem. So let's just take that and bump it down a little. I think that's probably going to be pretty good. So now what we got to do, we just got to highlight all of this again. And then we're going to copy it back over to our merge layer. And we highlight our text. and we go back to our weld command. So that's done. So now we just go back through the other stuff, and we'll go through this real fast this time. So we go back to our top text, turn it on, make it active and turn it on. Now where did my top text go? I lost my top text. It's still there now. Okay, let's see. We already moved it. I think it's still moved. We got bottom and top. So our problem is fixed there. So we want to highlight everything again, including our border. We want to, maybe I moved it. So copy the layer to merge layer. So there's our merge layer all by itself. Everything's on there. Turn that off, and our top layer's on. Okay, so we're good. I probably moved it instead of copied, so don't do that. So we want to go back to our merge layer, and we want to do the welding. So highlight all your text, weld it again. Okay, so that's all good. So go back to our top text, highlight everything, back to toolpaths, pocket toolpath. We're back at 0, so we want to start at 0, down 1/8 of an inch, 1/16 and 1/4 inch end mills. We're on the raster. And I think we're on raster. Yeah, we're on raster. And then hit calculate. Preview all toolpaths. So that looks good. So we close that. Go back to our drawing mode. Turn off top layer. Activate merge layer. So we need to get back in 2D view. So we're on the merge layer. Highlight everything there. Go back over to toolpaths. Pocket toolpath. Change the start depth to 0.125. Still in raster. All that should stay the same. Hit calculate. Let's reset our preview because that's going to get rid of the old preview. That old information will still be there. So I'm going to hit reset. Preview all toolpaths. And it looks like it fixed all of our issues around the X there. And the T came out just fine. The N was kind of borderline. So that looks pretty good. I'll tilt it up here to let you really see the depth on that. So it's pretty easy and simple. And the only problem, and the only reason I'm leaving that in the video is because that'll happen to you sometimes. But you can catch it in the design. You know, just zoom in on your previews here, and you could see where we had that little bit of problem between the T and the X and the E and the X. And all it took was just to adjust the text just a little bit. And I'd already knew that this was an issue with the end mill not being small enough to get in between that X and T. So just design it. Take it, run in your toolpath, zoom in on it, and look at it. And if you've got any issues that don't look right, you can go back, do a little bit of adjusting, and then you can fix it. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you learned something. I will do another video on this text on text using the VCarve. It looks cool. You know, just get the V cut around the letters and stuff. But it has there's some more things, more steps you got to do to make that work right. So anyway, I appreciate you watching. Please like, please subscribe, and please share my videos. Thank you.